I've been starting and growing membership businesses for over 15 years. It's been a great ride. It's freed me up to travel to over a dozen countries and live and work in three of them. But it hasn't always been a smooth journey, and the challenges that I've faced have been incredibly stressful. So, if you're just starting to scale your membership website, here are the top four things that I wish I knew before I started. When I first launched my membership business, we hit product market fit pretty quickly. Within months, we were getting dozens of signups and things were looking very promising. But the increased number of signups created some technical issues. It was at that point that I turned to a friend of a friend to help out with the technical work. He was an affordable developer and very reliable. Anyone who's built an online business can see the paradox here because really reliable developers are usually not cheap. But I was happy. When we needed a feature or hit a technical hiccup, his response was always, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." It was perfect. So perfect that I agreed to give him 15% of revenue to do the technical work on an ongoing basis. Fast forward a couple of years and the site has grown tremendously. We had a good membership base and we're still climbing in terms of numbers. But whereas before my developer was quick and reliable when it came to implementing features and fixing issues, he began to drag his feet. Whenever I asked him to do something, it was a week before he would start. The problem got worse over the following year and he began to do only the minimal amount of work on the site while collecting his 15%. When I brought this up, he suggested to hire a team of developers and manage them for me, but then I would be stuck paying for both him and the team of developers he put to work. No good. So after a few conversations, I decided to let him go. His response? Well, he claimed ownership over the work that he did for the company and demanded 3 months worth of revenue as compensation for the quote unquote sale. I was in a corner. I hadn't specified that all the work and the customer solutions that he built for the site was the property of the company. And if I angered him by refusing to pay, he could take down the entire site. That was an expensive mistake. So, lesson one, make sure to protect yourself with good employment contracts. The last thing you want to do is have your employees take advantage of you, and many will. At minimum, you need to own the IP they create, so write that into the contract. You also want to specify a minimum level of work that they have to complete for you and in what time frame. Halfway through this fiasco, I spent some time back in Vancouver and visited a university friend that had reached out and wanted to meet up. Great, I thought. He was always pretty funny and lived right downtown, so we had some beers and I crashed on his couch. At the end of our meetup, he was asking about my business and mentioned that he wanted to help out if he could. I wasn't really sure what he could do because we had all our bases covered, so I thanked him but politely declined and we began to talk about meeting up in Thailand a month or so later. It just worked out that we would both be in the same country at the same time, so thought we'd do some backpacking. This was a major perk of running an online business. Being able to travel whenever I wanted because I could just take my laptop with me was something that I made sure to take full advantage of. During the trip, I had a critical issue with the site. Being a developer, he was more than capable of solving the issue for me right away rather than having to wait for my developer to get to work. Then he began starting to subtly knock my developer, which was pretty warranted to be honest. My developer was lazy, dragging his feet a lot, and I knew it. I knew I needed someone else. But my university friend began to badmouth him more and more, along with little comments about the implications of his shoddy work. I liked his insight, but I failed to realize that something else was going on. By the end of the trip, he'd smoothly weaved his credentials and expertise into our conversations and painted himself as the obvious person to take over for my then current developer. He sold me on a major new website upgrade that I obviously needed, which he was best suited to implement, of course. We began discussions about compensation, which quickly scaled from $20 per hour to $25, and then refusing to work for anything less than $50 per hour, and trying to ramp his pay up to $75. Remember that all of this started from him just wanting to help out previously and not expecting anything in return. I snapped out of the sales process at that point and called the whole thing off. I'm ashamed to say it, but he managed to manipulate me almost to the point of signing a $50 per hour employment contract with him and handing him a revenue share as well. Thankfully, it was the fact that I was cheap as that prevented me from signing away a chunk of my company. I was just way too trusting. Lesson 2. When you hit success, be very careful of the people who climb out of the woodwork to reconnect or help out. When you reach a certain level of success, people will try to leech off of it, so you need to be a bit cynical about the people's intentions. Don't be completely cynical, but you have to realize that there are a lot of people who want to leech off of your success, so you need to stay guarded. You need to make sure that they prove to be trustworthy and not just out to take from you. And then once trust is earned, you need to monitor their interactions with you to ensure that you can maintain trust in them. A couple of years after launching my business, I began to take it a bit easier. I'd hired some staff and was basically set to just pick some stocks and let the previous work I had put into writing articles collect leads for me. By that time, I had something like 150 articles and had written an occasional guest post on websites owned by other people. Writing was about the easiest thing in the world for me because I'd come out of a 6-year undergrad in philosophy, writing paper after paper, so I put that skill to work. At first, I was getting some traffic and things were going well. The traffic from organic search and guest posts was enough to bring in about 150 clicks a day, and that was enough to keep my website on a steady growth trajectory. But rather than keep my foot on the accelerator, I coasted, traveling the world, going to nightclubs, and just hanging out with friends. To be honest with you, it was a pretty good life. It wasn't long before sales dried up. Without new guest posts, the ones I had written were a bit stale and weren't getting organic traffic rankings that would carry the site. Without writing articles on my own site or updating them, competitors were starting to outcompete me in search, so sales began to slowly drop off. I refocused on the business to retool my articles, but was not as aware of what to do as I should have been. I was unprepared to compete effectively because I just hadn't learned my craft, search marketing. It only took a couple of years, but I was already behind on what was happening on Google, and it took a lot of work to really understand how to improve my rankings. In the end, I poured time and resources into learning as much as I could about the Google algorithm, how to properly craft silos, interlink, craft good outlines that would help each article rank, and stuff like that. I got the site back onto the upward trajectory, but it was definitely behind where it could have been if I had dedicated myself more to my craft. Lesson 3. Marketing is the lifeblood of a business. My recommendation is to become highly skilled in the marketing channel that you think you're best suited to, and then constantly refine your abilities. When you stop marketing, your business will suffer. If you can't compete for your audience effectively, others will steal it for themselves. Now, it doesn't matter what channel you're focused on, so long as that's where your target customers are. It can be YouTube, writing articles, podcasting, or social media. Even physical mail or speaking at events will help. But you have to master at least one, and then you have to go hard at it so you can grow your business. I've been in this game for a long time, since the mid-2000s actually. When I got into membership businesses, I really started to appreciate the recurring income and predictable nature of the business model. I've had some great successes and made some major mistakes along the way. I made most of my biggest mistakes early on and didn't really have a clue what I was doing. When my main site, Net Hunter, took off, it kind of felt like it climbed onto the back of a lion. It was just riding that beast as he took off running. I learned the craft bit by bit until I got a handle about exactly what I need to do to manage this thing and keep it going. But I did make most of my big mistakes during that early period, probably because I was trying to figure the whole thing out for myself. I remember once that we had a good lead magnet, a way to collect email addresses from prospective buyers, but our email client saw that we were sending out free stock information and threatened to cut us off unless we stopped. It was apparently against their terms of service. Oops. But rather than figure out how to send the same content without them, I decided to swap to a different lead magnet. I tried my best to produce some content that was really engaging for prospects, stuff they'd really like, but none of it worked as well as the free stock tips newsletter had worked. As a result, the number of leads entering our funnel declined, along with our sales. Lesson 4. Always remember the money formula. It's very simple. Traffic times opt-in conversions equals leads. Leads times sales page conversions equals customers. Customers multiplied by the sale price equals revenue. Revenue multiplied by your contribution margin equals your gross profit. And then your gross profit less your general operating expenses equals your pre-tax profit. If you want a simpler version, it's this. Traffic times conversions equals leads. Leads times your sales rate equals your profit. You need to fine-tune multiple steps to earn the most amount of revenue possible. You need to have a good content strategy or ads to get the most people looking at your site as possible. Of those, only a few will ever become subscribers. If you're doing 2%, you're doing well. Out of those free subscribers, some will become buyers. If you're not doing the articles, podcasts, vlogs, running ads, or sending out direct mail, or you're not doing enough of it, you'll have fewer people looking at your opt-in offer. If your opt-in offer sucks, then you won't have many people joining your email list. And if you can't sell, then you won't have many people buying. It all works together. Now, the mistake I was making was that the new opt-in offer was cutting my sales funnel traffic in half about a quarter of the way down. I was still getting a good amount of traffic, but less of that traffic was finding its way into my email funnel. By swapping out the free stock picks for other less competitive offers, fewer people were looking at my sales emails and converting into paying customers. I was losing revenue. So when you're running your membership website, remember that you need to optimize the amount of relevant traffic that you're getting, your opt-in offer, your sales emails, your sales page copy, and your pricing. If this sounds like a lot of work, it is. But if you have a business right now that's bringing in customers, the good news is that you can optimize these one at a time. I recommend focusing on the smallest numbers first, the lowest converting parts of your funnel, because this is where you're going to see the largest improvements in your sales and revenue if you can bring those tiny numbers up. If you're only seeing 1% of the free email subscribers clicking on the link to go to your sales page off of your sales email, but you have a 2% email opt-in rate, then you'd be better off trying to get more people to click to go to your sales page off of that email. There's a lot to running a membership business, which is why I try to interview as many founders as I can. I recommend checking out a few of the interviews we've done for some perspective on running a membership site. Start with my discussion with Kevin Rogers, who's one of the best internet marketers in the business. And when you're finished with that, I recommend looking at my discussion with Kathy Nelson, who was able to turn a simple, everyday problem into $1 million membership business.